Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our April 28th City Council work session. The city manager will go over the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of City Council. Busy couple weeks. The city's cut a few ribbons lately, and I'm just grateful for all the support the council has put into all the projects that we've seen as of late open. A couple business item briefings wherein we'll, as staff, kind of get you to speed on the topic and prepare you for a subsequent vote on those. There's a couple work session agenda items, some of which staff will present, some of which you and your peers will present. Roll call, and then one closed session item. And with that, Mayor, turn it back to you.
Sir, first.
If I can just
Yes.
add one thing to that. On the agenda, it's agenda item number 7 was Councilmember Timmer's item. She has since reached out this morning and asked to move that off to a different meeting in the future.
Ms. Timmer?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, and thank you so much. I do want to push that off for a couple different reasons, but actually I have a request to you and Mr. Mischens, who isn't here, and Mr. Feraldi, if it would be amenable to council if we could push the council presented items to the next meeting, since this is our only budget work session. I think it'll be a productive work session. I have some items I'd like to bring forward that I think will be favorable to all of council, I hope, but that would be my general request if that's amiable to everyone. If not, that's fine, but I think it'd be helpful for the sake of discussion for the budget.
Any discussion? No?
All right, so let's move forward with a very packed agenda.
Let's move forward. Business briefing item. Rezoning 205 Graves Mill Road for office use. Ms. Rachel.
Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council. The purpose of this petition is to rezone a portion of 205 Graves Mill Road to allow the use of a building as an office facility that is not associated with an industrial use. Planning Commission recommended approval of this item at their public hearing on March 25th. Our future land use map currently recommends employment 1 use for the property. These are intended for small and large-scale office, research and development, and light manufacturing uses, restaurant, light retail, and other business services that can support office and industrial uses can also be located in these areas. The existing I-2 light industrial district zoning was established in 1978. In this district, office uses must be related to an industrial use taking place on the site. The owner would like to lease this property to a non-industrial tenant, which is why they have proposed the rezoning. 205 Gravesville Road is approximately 1.76 acres total. The portion of the property proposed for rezoning consists of approximately 29/100ths of an acre and is shown here on this slide in red. The property contains a structure originally constructed as a residential home in 1940, but was later converted to office use associated with the adjacent Belvac machinery facility. It's approximately 1,800 square feet in size. The remainder of the property contains another structure, which is currently used by Belvac for industrial purposes. This portion of the site, which is shown in purple, would remain zoned as it is now I-2. If the petition is approved, the existing building is proposed for use as a standalone office facility unrelated to the adjacent industrial. There is no proposed exterior modification at this time, and the structure is served by its own entrance and parking area. The proposed use would be permitted in the proposed B3 district and would agree with our future land use map and should have limited impact on the area. This item would return for City Council public hearing on May 12th.
Thank you. Next item, conditional use permit at 3839 Murray's Place and 3436 Oddfellows Road for LU housing. Ms. Rachel.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of this conditional use permit is for 2 new units for resident director housing and the continued use of the former hotel structure as a dormitory in B5 General Business District. Planning Commission recommended approval of this item at their public hearing on April 8th. Our future land use map recommends mixed use and resource conservation uses for the properties. The dormitory housing is located in the mixed use area, which is hatched on the concept plan, the orange and black shaded. These areas are intended to be developed with a balanced mix of residential, neighborhood, commercial, and civic uses. The subject properties were annexed into the city in 1940. The existing zoning was established in 1978. The portion of the properties where the student housing would be located is in the B5 district, which is the brown portion on the zoning map. In this district, schools, colleges, and dormitories are permitted upon approval of a CUP from council. The subject properties consist of about 11 acres located at 3839 Murray Place and 3436 Oddfellows Road. This facility was originally constructed as a hotel. It currently contains 4 existing buildings with a total of 260 units and 500 student beds. The property has been used as student housing for several years now, we think since approximately 2010. However, neither city staff nor the petitioner, LU in this case, could find documentation or approval of the facility as a dormitory. So the continued use of the existing facility as dorms is included in this petition for the 2 resident director units, to just kind of formalize this. The 2 new units would be for resident directors, which are professional live-in staff that oversee the dormitories. And in summary, the construction of the 2 new housing units and the continued use of the former hotel as a dorm should have limited impact on the surrounding area. This item will also return on May 12th. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ferrari?
Just a quick question, Rachel. I'm seeing a creek there. Did they provide any explanation or background on what they plan to do for water runoff? That's always something I'm trying to at least be a little bit mindful of, given the development and taking away vegetation.
So they don't actually plan to take away any of the trees or anything. They don't plan to do anything in the creek or floodplain area. The units would be in that blue area on the edge of the parking lot there, so it's currently just grass. I do believe they would fall under the the threshold for stormwater management facilities. So I don't know that they'd be subject to mitigating stormwater in this case, because it is a relatively small project. But if they were to
You could've
propose.
just said, just don't worry about it, Chris.
Okay. It's cool.
Anyone else? Thank you,
Thank
Ms.
you.
Rachel.
Thank you, Rachel.
Number 4, work session agenda items. Number 3, FY '27 budget work session. Ms. Whit.
Thank you. So after budget retreat, we did have a couple of questions. And those questions from Councilmember Feraldi and Mayor Taylor were, how can we continue the motor vehicle license and trash fee waivers? And then from Councilman Mischins, please identify one-time expenses requested in the school's budget. And some of that information did go out in a memo, but just thought we should kind of put it all out there today. So for our motor vehicle license fee, it does generate $1,550,000 in revenue. In order to waive it for another year, it would be my recommendation that we found recurring revenues to replace that funding instead of one-time money. We do know now of $650,000 in some revenue that we would receive from the state that is not included in the '27 budget, in the proposed budget. And then there's $900,000 in recurring funds that is transferred into the fleet fund for purchase of some fire vehicles. And because of the cost of fire vehicles, we always kind of go through, whenever we order one, we always look at, is there a discount when we prepay? Is it better to use our line of credit? We could use the line of credit to fund those fire vehicles that are proposed to be replaced in the '27 budget, which would free up about $900,000 of recurring funds. So, and of course, this is at council's discretion and vote for where, if you choose to do this, if you have other ideas of where you would want to find that money. For the trash fee, It generates, oh, that's me, sorry. $2,480,000. We consider that dedicated revenue because it does offset the cost of trash. To potentially waive that for one more year, I don't know where we would find recurring revenue to do that. And so to use one-time funds to replace that money, there's a couple of places that I'm going to throw out there, but again, this is council's budget to decide. We do have a debt service reserve that has been in the general fund for a number of years. We started setting some money aside, thinking we potentially could use it for the police building, and some other projects. We have not utilized those funds. Again, that's one-time funds, so once you spend them, they're gone. So that 1.7 million is sitting there. And then you would have to fill in the rest, potentially with some pay-as-you-go projects. So we had about $21 million in our request for pay-go projects for 27, and about $9 million that we could identify to fund that. So we've already reduced it substantially, but in your major building repairs, you could potentially reduce it another $753,000 to make up that $2,480,000. Or again, some kind of other projects or whatever council would want to identify. And then to address the second question that we had about schools funding, I forget I'm in charge here. So schools presented us in response to Councilman Mischin's question about $1.2 million of items. And just one note here, the school's nutrition equipment that they requested on this list was $250,000. But schools also submitted a request for capital in addition to the $20 million of bond funding projects that council committed to. $30 million in the second year, $20 million in the third year. They submitted a request of $1,645,222 in one-time items in the capital fund. So you'll note that let me find it. The school nutrition upgrades on this list is $200,000. So it's on the other list is $250,000 and on this list is $200,000. And it would be my recommendation that to go back to schools and kind of see what their priority is, because you could use this 1.6 million one time. So, and if the priority is the other list, which is the second list they provided, or maybe it's a combination of the two. But we did identify that $1.6 million. And the way we found the $1.6 million is there was a reserve on the books that council set aside funds for school closure. And then those funds were never utilized, so that would allow us to provide their pay-go capital, is how we saw it. But again, it's one-time funds, but if the other list is more important or a mixture of the two, you've got $1.6 million to work with. So that's what I have for these items. Council questions or discussions?
Any questions, any discussion? Mr. Mitchell?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What's the list of pay-go items that we currently have
They're
this
in,
year in the CIP that's funded with pay-go that could be one-time funds?
in the 26 budget or the 27
In the
budget?
27 budget.
Okay, those, I didn't bring my book. They're in the, if you can look at major building repairs in the buildings section for a list of what is proposed for the 27. There is an HVAC upgrade in there that potentially could be bond funded, which would free up one-time money. But again, you're increasing your, what you put on your line of credit. payday someday, but there is a large HVAC upgrade for City Hall that could potentially be bond funded, that could free up some funds as well, if council would choose to do that.
What about this $1.4 million in furniture for the library?
With the renovations for the library, I don't know that they're going to need all that. Can may be able to speak to that more, but they are going to need some money for shelving and one-time things.
That expense is not traditional furniture. It's technology upgrades, wiring, and equipment that goes fixed within the building, so much cheaper to do that now than after the fact, while the walls are all open and exposed. But it's not desks and things like that we normally think of with FF&E.
So I guess the question is more specifically, what is it? Because
So, projectors, wiring, Wi-Fi systems, that sort of thing. It serves as a community room, a meeting room, study hall space. So all of this, we've got to completely rewire it because we've completely re-updated the electric and that sort of thing. This is the technology component that was coming on the backside of that for the public to use.
I guess I'm confused why wiring wouldn't be included in the construction. That's a interesting.
It could be, but like the projectors and those type of things, we wouldn't want to bond fund those.
That's right.
Sure, but the wiring that's in the walls,
Right.
that's covered in the construction, right?
When we had set up the initial design of the project, that included all of the hardware. So think of, we were doing all the plumbing and electrical upgrades and that sort of thing. When we started to pull the technology piece online, and this was set up in last year's budget to be phased over 2 years, this was to include the technology component because a lot of that we're still trying to figure out as that technology changes.
Sure, but
You're welcome.
so if we're trying to figure it out, but we're trying to spend 1.4 million, that
We were
doesn't-
trying to figure out going into, we're talking about 24 coming into this project.
So we've got $1.4 million in projectors and
We can
What
get you,
other-
we can certainly get you an itemized list of what that technology looks like.
Because-
But I'm just telling you that it's more.
does this
stuff that's fixed
include like
within.
the makerspace stuff?
The idea, it might include the upfits within the wall for the technology, but it is not the 3D printer. The library's goal there is to fundraise for that.
Okay, I'd be curious to see
Yes, sir.
what that
Absolutely.
1.4 million looks like, because I feel like
The
when
big
you're
thing is,
looking
I
at-
just wanted to distinguish that it's
Sure.
not, because when we talk about FF&E, we usually talk about tables and shelves and things like that,
Yeah,
and that's not what this is. So that's the
Thank
big
you.
distinction.
When we're looking,
Yes, sir.
1.4 million, that's, you're looking at $40 a square foot on a 35,000 square foot library? Is that sound
Sounds
about
right.
So you're looking at $40 a square foot on
Technology.
on technology.
Yes, sir.
If that's what that is, that's pretty substantial. And when I look at our priorities, what they're requesting here is, the majority of this is for special education services and alternative education is what the majority of this request is for one-time funding. And when I look at priorities, technology in the library or special ed services and alternative education resources for the schools, I feel like one's a little more important than the other as far as priorities, so I just want to point that out.
Certainly council's decision. I do want to clarify, though, this is the public-facing component, so without that, the users don't get it. This is not for the staff, so.
Sure, but I think that if you probably were to take a look at the overall constituency of the city and the number of users in our school buildings and our classrooms versus the users in the library, I think that you're going to impact a lot more lives by having orderly classrooms, because we have more resources invested in special education services and alternative education services than you are in technology in the library. So when I look at the return on investment there, I've got to go with impacting the lives of the teachers and the kids versus the library if I've got to make a decision. That's just where I'm at on it.
Dr. Wild, just make sure I'm clear, so.
Donna, so you said that basically there is 1.6 million available?
That,
So-
that 1.6 million is what we funded their initial PAYGO request with, that is over and above the $30 million bond funding, because these projects don't qualify for bond funding.
So those one-time funding.
Yes.
And then what was that request they had?
There you
One
go.
point-
This is
1.2
1.2 million
right.
of additional things that was in their initial request for operating funds.
So again, did we talk about, is it possible just saying to the school system, this is what we have available, and let them make the best choice, as they're the best caretakers of those funds? So the 1.6 million, tell the school system, these are the funds that are additional available.
Right.
And then you make those decisions, what's best for the school system.
And keep in mind too, $200,000 of that is duplicative, in that it's on both lists.
Okay.
Right.
So, the number's a little bit smaller
Okay.
overall than what you see there.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you so much for the presentation, Donna. This is helpful. I have a quick administrative question, and then kind of diving back into these numbers, following up on Dr. Wilder's comments and Mr. Mischin's. And I'm so sorry, am I missing, I'm the technologically challenged one on council, am I missing the PowerPoint in the portal? Is that me over, or can I get a copy of the?
It will be posted in the
Okay.
portal after this meeting.
That's great. No, and I appreciate that. I just, I'm the one that's always missing stuff technically. Okay. That would be really helpful. Thank you. So I'm looking at the two lists from the schools, and that's a helpful distinction because I didn't have or understand that before. Dr. Wilder, following up on your point, I think, and I could be wrong in paraphrasing this, Ms. Witt, but the debt service reserve, that's a 1.7 million, correct? And then with the capital for the schools, as far as capital improvements, that's around 1.6, but there's about 200,000 that's possibly duplicative with their list of one-time funding opportunities from the joint meeting. And then the joint meeting amount with the one-time funding is 1.2, roughly. Well, minus around, minus 200,000, so that's perfect. I echo Mr. Mischin's questions with the library as far as if there's hardwiring in the walls, why that wouldn't be included in the capital improvement component. Additional one-time that I've kind of looked at, and I'm a fan of Property Toolkit. Of the three of us, I'm the fan of Property Toolkit, but that is an increase, so there's 800,000 there. There's about 100,000 for downtown, and then there's 350,000 when it comes to the Miller Park Pool Playground. With all the improvements that are happening at the pool location, maybe we could hold off on the playground and get this money to the schools, because I really feel personally that with the transition of the superintendent and all of the transition that she's working through, time for efficiencies will come within the schools, but right now she really needs to be backed. And so as much as we can support this transition time period in the schools, I think it's significant. With the 4 items that I mentioned in the one-time funding for city PAYGO, that more than covers or provides some wiggle room to cover the 1.2 in one-time expenses that has to do with alternate education, nutrition, and special education needs. And then with the debt service reserve, that 1.7 million more than covers the 1.6 in capital improvements. I think if we make those shifts back to schools this year, we can look at some of the ancillary elements in PAYGO in the following budget cycle. So that would be what I would put forward to council, and those would be my recommendations in the context of the budget. That would be where I'd like to see the priorities go.
Mr. Faradi?
So there's 1.6 there that they can use already.
Yes.
So why would we shift other things on the back end to make up for 1.6 million if they've already got it? I don't know if you want to answer that question,
That's not-
but, well, help me understand, if they have 1.6 million, hold on, Greg, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Should we just ask the schools, hey, you've got this, can we shift this current money to make sure they get what they need when so we don't have to rejigger everything on the back end?
So kind of to frame it all up, there's $1.6 million, $1.65 million in funding, one-time funding currently allocated to schools. On top of that, there is, if you take the $200,000 out, there's about another $1 million in requests that could be considered one time. So if we look at schools funding overall, we're about $1 million short of funding all the things that could be considered one time in both their capital and their operating requests. If there's a couple schools of thought. One is you can take the 1.65 that's available and ask schools to allocate that between their total request, which would be 2.6 for argument's sake, or identify another $1 million-ish in capacity by doing less things, and then using that funding to cover all of schools' requests. That's how I would summarize it.
So can you summarize what my concept was? Since I'm struggling to understand what the other is.
We have $1.6 million allocated to schools. We could ask schools, correct, we could ask schools if they would prioritize that 1.6 across the two lists.
That's what I would prefer. It would cost less. Thank you.
Wouldn't actually. Mr. Deemer?
Yeah, I think we're apples and oranges here, but I do agree with the concept that we need to prioritize some of these education initiatives that they've asked for, especially as special education students. I think we will impact a whole lot more citizens doing some of these things for our public schools than if we do what I think is something that's been miscategorized at the library. Furniture, in my mind and in most people's minds, means a certain thing. And wiring and walls technology spending is certainly something I'm very familiar with. That is part of construction of a building, and in my mind, it should have been included in the original CIP costs. I don't think of projectors when I think of furniture. Call me crazy, but that wouldn't be what I would categorize it as. But in the general perspective, I do like the idea of spreading that money out from the library to more citizens and students in our public school systems. That would be my general comment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just following up on Mr. Feraldi's comments, I sympathize with the desire for priorities. It would not cost less because this is all money that's in the context of our budget. So unless we're shifting that to DMV license fees, and you've brought some of these up, so maybe that's where you're thinking, or some other element where it's returning to the taxpayer, it's all costing, it's the same total sum, it's just a matter of where those priorities go in the budget. And I believe those priorities really belong in the school system right now, as opposed to some of these other locations. Even if we were to decrease, let's say, the library furniture component or wiring component, whatever that might be, to say 900,000, or reduce it by $500,000, you're still able to shift these things around where you're making up the VRS gap potentially in the schools. So there are areas where we can adjust some of these PAYGO numbers to reduce them a little bit. It doesn't cut it out entirely, or we can shift those around and it covers the VRS gap, and then that 1.7 million in the debt service reserve covers the capital. So I think we're able to really fully back the schools in this budget in a substantive way if we're willing to look at those adjustments.
Ms. Reed?
Ms. Witt, can you speak to the VRS piece, because I'm confused by that?
I don't understand the VRS gap in schools.
Oh, so the projected VRS savings of 1.7 million, even if we round down to 1.5 million, that makes a $900,000 gap in the context of their request so the gap is 2.6 million in their request.
But the 1.7 million in savings wasn't figured into their.
Correct. And so I'm saying
request.
we don't have, even if we provide for that. So if we take the 2.6, minus out, say, $1.5 million, to say it's VRS savings, it decreases the gap in their needed request and the amount that we would provide to cover that difference,
Oh, okay.
is what I'm talking about. So there's room to play with the context of those numbers in order to fully back the school's request, even if we don't factor in the VRS savings or if we do factor in the VRS savings. I haven't written out about both pathways, but I'm saying we don't even have to fully scrap a line item in the pay-go to cover the school request if we factor in VRS. If we don't factor in VRS, then we just transfer the library component, and I'll work with you on this, Alicia. Then we transfer the library component over to the schools, and there's still margin within the library component, but it covers the school's entire request. I'll jot it out. I'll grab the floor again in a minute.
Okay.
Ms. Reed?
Mr. White, can the library, as it's been planned, be completed without?
No, ma'am, and I do want to clarify, it's furniture, fixtures, and equipment. So it is absolutely set up to include long-term projects connected to the building. So that's where that technology component comes from.
Right, so regardless of where people think it should have been categorized or whatever, this is necessary for the completion of the project.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
if we take money away from that and allocate it somewhere else, then the project cannot be completed as it was approved, and then it could not be utilized the way it needs to be utilized for the use of an actual library, which is actually a community partner of the schools, because a lot of the kids that actually go to, let's say, EC Glass, do go over and utilize the computers and the books and the space to do homework, and it is actually a partner of our education system. So to not have one can affect the other. I just want to make sure that's clear. So if
That's
we're going to be
correct.
supporting schools, supporting the library is actually a piece of that for a lot of the kids who utilize that space, especially after school.
That's correct.
Okay, great, thank you. I do like the idea of offering up the schools the option of picking between the two categories. I think that is a good idea, because they can look at the two charts and go, okay, we have the 1.6 available that we did not use from the closure, and then say, hey, prioritize between the two, what are the most important. I think that's a great first step, because then they can really, look between the two and say if they want to put it all in CIP, that's great. If not, they can pull from the two. And I think that's wonderful, because then they can really take from the top what they need. And I mean, there are really important things on both lists. All of it is important, but I think they'll be able to look and see what really needs to be done right away and what they can hold off on. So that would be my suggestion. I think that's a great option.
Dr. Wilder?
Thank you. I don't feel comfortable in taking money from a program we already approved, and then they can't finish it. Just do a half a library. I don't think that's fair to the library system. I understand the importance of a library. How so many people don't have books in the home, or don't have computer access in the home, or don't have a place to meet and things of that nature. So I understand the total relevance of the library. Now I'm the biggest supporter of school systems. Served on the school board for 9 years. I'm probably the only person on here who got kids in the school system. So I am the biggest. One of the only, I take it back, one of the only people who have, but I've only served on the school board. Thank you. But anyway, I think it's important. I love the schools. I've been devoted to that. Again, I just think, let the school system decide what's best. And also, we've given them some support in that area. And this is what the service we can do. We can still maintain our library, still maintain our Miller Park pool, the pool items. If some item we weren't approved, we didn't want to do, then we want to take money from it. I don't think that's fair. I don't appreciate that. And right now, for the summer, we're trying to figure out what we're going to do for the summer for kids that utilize that pool during the summertime. They have so many kids that utilize that pool for the low cost, for the activities, keeping the kids off the streets and that nature. So we got to figure out what to do during that time period as it is right now. But then we're going to take more money from that and harm more inner city children, inner city families, and for recreation activities. I don't think that's fair, and I don't approve of that. Thank you.
Ms. Timmer?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Go ahead.
If we had so much. Now I always say this, and every time we come to the budget, when we reduce expenses like the real estate taxes, it's always going to be an effect. I always say that here's another cost and effect. We reduce. Yes, I said it. We reduce real estate taxes and that nature. We don't have as much to work with. If we love kids in school so much, why did we keep the real estate tax the way it is, and we wouldn't be having all these conversations? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, absolutely. And just so you know, Dr. Wilder, the reason that I highly support having a reduced real estate tax rate is to keep kids housed. Affordability of housing and generational wealth of home ownership. But that's another discussion when we have reevaluations, but it's an important factor in this discussion. The other item I wanted to address in the context of Dr. Wilder's comments is this is not removing money from something that has already been approved, or we wouldn't be approving it in this budget cycle. We approved a CIP in council. We did not approve the PAYGO that is currently before us. They are separate items. They address the same topic, but they are separate items requiring separate approval, which is why we will have 2 readings and vote on the question of that approval. Going back to the earlier point that I very much convoluted, but I appreciate your help, especially in the first round of comments. And I'm going to be redundant again because we're dealing with the numbers and we're dealing it in the context of this PowerPoint. So there's a $2.6 million gap in the school's request. Roughly 1.6 in capital as far as a portion of that gap. So the capital list.
That's not part of the gap.
It's funded.
That capital is funded.
Yeah, that 1.6
So that goes to your
funded.
earlier question. Okay, that is helpful because that distinction I was not picking up on. So the 2.6 and then there's the 1.2 in one-time funding of the 2.6.
Correct.
Okay. And then within the PAYGO, and these are the 4 items that I would like us to consider potential adjustments on in the context of the PAYGO. There's the library, which is at, and I have this written, 1.4 million. There's downtown development at 100,000. There's the Miller Park Playground at 350,000. And then there is the property toolkit at 800,000. You put those together, it's about 2.6 million. I'm not saying we scrap all of those, but if we adjust them and add in the VRS funding, and we assume, say, the VRS funding is at around 1.5 million instead of the 1.75 million, there's a $900,000 gap that could be pulled from potentially within the context of those 4 line items in the PAYGO.
If you assume that the VRS funding will come in an additional 1.5 million, the actual schools gap to fully fund all of schools' requests, the full 4.6 or 4,531,000 is $731,000.
Can you switch back to that 1.6 million slide? Thank you.
So that is fully funded. So if you start with schools requested $4.5 million over and above what was provided last year.
Correct.
The city manager's proposed budget recommends an additional $2.1 million.
Yep.
That leaves $2,431,015.
Yep.
We assume we're going to get $1.5 million from VRS.
Yeah.
That leaves a gap of $931,015. That $200,000 right there, that school nutrition upgrades, is also part of the operating request. So you have to take that $200,000 out. If you take that $200,000 out, you're down to $731,015.
Yeah. Thank you. And I'm tracking with that. I think we can pull that from some element of these 4 PAYGO items. So, yeah.
Mayor, I would ask a rhetorical question, and I appreciate the conversation thus far. I would ask a rhetorical question of why the library, downtown, Mill Park Pool, and why the property toolkit are selected And I would submit to this council that if there's going to be an advocacy for removing dollars to make up some figure, you should pull it out of your own zip code and not the ones I represent.
Anyone else? Ms. Timmer?
Mr. Feraldi, do you have other areas in the PAYGO that you would like to put forward to cover the $700,000 difference?
May I respond?
Yes, sir.
Mayor, I would respond to saying I indicated that I'm supportive of asking for the list from the schools as a starting point.
Ms. Timmer?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'd say we've received the list from the schools, and that's why we're having this discussion. But I yield the floor.
Mr. Missions?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. All right, so I just want to try to make sure I understand where we're at with these numbers, what we're looking at. So we've got a $1.2 million request not funded that if we found additional one-time funds, we could fund. Okay. On that request is $250,000 in school nutrition equipment upgrades that is duplicative of the $200,000 in school nutrition upgrades on this list.
It's 250 on one and 200 on the other.
So let's
We-
just say
we
that it's
funded the
250 instead
200.
of 200 and 250, and it's not 450. So let's just say, so then that would end up creating an additional 200,000 in capacity there that we wouldn't necessarily need here. So then that brings us down to
Yeah, it really makes this, oops, sorry.
$1 million,
Yeah,
right?
really, 1,020,000.
Okay,
Correct.
1,020,000. And those are one-time resources, because this is all the pay-as-you-go is coming from our unassigned fund balance, correct?
No, that's coming from the $1.6 million. This $1.6 million is coming from a reserve that city council set up a couple of years ago for school closure.
But this 1 million or 1.2 million, if we moved it from pay-as-you-go, would be,
Yes, that
Unassigned
would,
fund
yes,
balance.
correct,
so that's dollars left over from last year.
correct.
Okay. So, and it looks like I've got the list now. So when I look at that total list, it looks like we've got, does it sound like 10 million-ish in pay-as-you-go this year?
That's about 9 million.
9 million, okay. And we've got the major building repairs and improvements, multiple projects. We've got parking lot repairs. Then we've got the public library, furnitures, fixtures, and equipment. And the question I have is, $40 a square foot, what can we do for $20 a square foot? Is there a difference in the, what we can do with, I'd love to see that detailed list of that, right? Because $40 a square foot for furnitures, fixtures, and equipment, and potentially wire, I mean, that just doesn't, I'm very curious about that. Public transit improvements and bus replacements, I don't think that we can touch that because that's part of their fleet schedule, and they talked about how long it takes to get these buses, and that this is just, I think there's some buses coming in that they've been waiting on for that, right? Retaining wall replacement program, downtown development, we nixed the 100,000 for downtown development last year, if I remember correctly. I don't think that ended up in the adopted budget. Is that right?
I am not sure off the top of my head. I'd have to go back and look. I thought we
See.
funded it.
Well, we can look that up. So downtown development, we've got the Ivy Creek Innovation Park, Sites A and B development. I think that's a match, is that right? To get additional funding from the state on that, is that correct?
For what now?
Ivy Creek Innovation Park, Sites A and B development, that's 350,000. That should be a match, I'm assuming.
We did get grant funds. Part of this is to help with the road leading up to that project.
Okay. And then we've got 800,000 in for property toolkit. that's something I'd be interested in looking if we could reduce that some to cover this. Street and utility extensions to promote economic development, that's 250. I don't think that needs to be messed with. The 262,000 of athletic field maintenance, I think that we need to keep maintaining those maintenance when we're not maintaining things that puts us in a position where we got with the schools, right? There's some general park maintenance funds in here as well. Miller Park playground replacement, you know, I looked it up. I see this is 350,000 here for the Miller Park playground replacement, and the one that the Kiwanis Club did, I think the total cost on that was 180,000 downtown. I'm curious why whatever we're doing in Miller Park is almost twice the price. So that's something interesting to me to see that the downtown playground is fantastic, right? So why is the Miller Park playground replacement?
Kiwanis didn't fund that whole playground. There was the site improvements and some of the foundational work that the city actually funded. So when you combine the two together, I believe it was over $300,000 that we can confirm that.
Okay, yeah, I'd be interested in that. Parks and trails paving and lighting, petroleum storage, radio replacement. Now, one question that I have about that is I looked in the flash drive that you provided, and maybe if you could help me find it, maybe I just don't see it, but I was looking for where that, you know, because that last year, those radios were paid for out of the operating budget, correct?
For fire.
fire?
This next money is going towards replacing all the in-vehicle
The mobile units in the vehicles?
mobile units.
Sure.
Yes.
But last year it was paid for in the fire department budget, right?
Correct.
So I'm trying to reconcile where that came from, because in capital, and what you guys provided us in the the proposed FY '27, there's only 210,000. So where did that $800,000 in radios end up? Because that would have been a capital purchase in the operating budget, correct?
I don't think we actually capitalize radios
Okay.
because each unit's not valued high enough to capitalize it
All right.
as such,
Okay.
technically. But they did have fire reprioritize their needs so that they could pay for those radios out of their operating budget.
So, but when I look at what the categories are here that you provide us, you've got obviously salaries, employee benefits, contractual services, internal service charges, other charges, rentals and leases, and then capital outlay. I'm trying to find where that $800,000 would have ended up in there, because it's
As far as the actual for 25?
the actual, yes, I guess it would have been the actual for 25. Yep.
And I'd have to look at that, but, because they did identify the funds, and I think before the radios actually came in, though, they may have done a PO which carried forward, which would be part of the amended 26.
I think the purchase was made in May. That's what the records you provided.
I think the PO was done in May, and then I'm not sure when they were delivered, but it should have been a 25 expense, but I can double check that.
Because I've been looking for that expense and I can't find it. That's a rather large expenditure not to be able to find. So that question just arose out of going down the list. Then we've got the Fire Station 9 Maintenance Reserve, 62,000. Lynchburg City Stadium Capital Maintenance Reserve, 150,000. I think we're tied to that with the
Franchise.
with the franchise agreement, so we have to do
correct.
that. And then the Snow, Street, and Bridge Reserve, which I'm certain we used a substantial amount of that in this wonderful ice we had this past year, so I think that we probably need to ensure that is replenished. And then obviously the 1.6 for the City Capital Projects Fund, or excuse me, the Schools Fund. So that's what I see. So when I look at that,
So nothing for Ward 1.
there's, I'm seeing the things that stick out to me are public library renovation, downtown development property toolkit, Miller Park playground replacement. When you look at, we've got to make a choice. This is up to us to determine the priority of where these funds go, right? And if we can figure out how to prioritize $1 million in these pay-as-you-go funds across to meet these needs, because she said there were needs, right? And I'm glad that they were able to identify one-time funds for these needs, or one-time expenditures for these needs, so it's not a structural increase that's ongoing. I think that's creative and a good way to do it. But I do think it's important that we set them up for success. When I look at the things that they've got on here, right, you know, middle school career and technical education improvements, that was already improved, or proposed, excuse me. Paving and fencing improvements. Fencing at schools is a security issue. There's some schools that don't have a perimeter fence on their outside where the kids are playing at recess. Facility maintenance reserves, we're investing these tens of millions of dollars into the school system. I think it's important that we prioritize those maintenance needs so that they can maintain the buildings as we are fixing them. You know, I don't think it's right to make them choose between this list and this list. I think that we should choose between what's already been proposed for the pay-as-you-go funds, or the schools, you know, one-time funding the schools, figuring out how to maybe scale some of these things back this year. Doesn't mean that you don't do it. Just means that you scale it back this year, because maybe one is more necessary than the other, right? Obviously, the priority to me would be to figure out how to send this money back to the taxpayers, but I just don't think we're going to have the votes to do that. But I would really consider looking at reallocating some of these one-time funds over to the school division to kind of close that gap and meet those needs.
Ms. Reed?
Great. So I would like to just reference something we talked about in finance earlier. We did talk about what we were going to be speaking about now. And if possible, can we discuss, Meyer, do you mind talking about the trash and the DMV fees? Is that okay? So I know that you and Councilman Feraldi had brought up the potential of trying to find the funds to give some money back to our taxpayers in this budget. And so can we bring up the slides to look at those, to look at that potential again? Okay, yes, thank you. All right, so Ms. Witt, can you kind of walk us through this again? Because I want to be able to kind of work in this discussion and just
Okay.
go through this
Sure.
one more time, if you don't mind.
So the motor vehicle license fee is, what it generates is $1,550,000 relatively. I believe you should replace that. If you're not going to charge that, then we need to look for other recurring funds to make that work.
Right.
And our recommendation was the $650,000 that has been identified now as additional state revenues that we could, in the 27 budget, and then also reduce the transfer for fire vehicles from the general fund of recurring funds, and utilize the line of credit to make the purchase of those vehicles, the fire vehicles.
Right.
So that would that would put back the $1,550,000. For the trash fee, you need $2,480,000. If the intent is just to waive that one more year, I think I don't really have recurring funds that you could replace that with. You'd have to look at one-time funds, which is why we suggested utilizing the debt service reserve. So that is one-time funds that was put there for really capital needs, reduce your borrowing, or paying for one-time items. That would give you 1.7 of it, and then to look for the reductions in CIP PAYGO projects to come up with the rest of it.
Okay. No, you can go ahead, because I'm just thinking. I mean, go ahead, sir, sorry, whatever.
Thank you, Mayor. How much recurring capacity would it add if we eliminated just the general wage increase for non-sworn personnel? So leaving the public safety pay progression plan in place, but just eliminating the non-sworn general wage increase?
I've got that number. I think it's 900,000. I'm sorry. Oh, just give me a second.
I think it's pretty close to the DMV license fee number.
Okay. Figured my-
It's in that ballpark. It's, I think
Yeah.
it's 1.5 and 1.7.
Because I think that, I'd like to
Hang on.
add that to the list as a recurring funding option to make the DMV license fee permanent, the DMV license fee reduction permanent by eliminating the non-sworn general wage increase. But just to reiterate, keeping the public safety pay progression plan in place.
Yeah, I think it's about 1.4 million. I think 900,000 is your sworn. And I can't believe.
And it was 1.55, so we're 120,000 off on that. But if we eliminated that general wage increase this year, could we make that the DMV license fees, basically? would be
That's
permanent?
recurring funds.
Yeah, they'd be
It's
permanent.
$1,432,500.
There you go.
Is that for all other employees?
That would be everyone except public safety.
Ooh. Didn't we take away the increase last year too or something?
Yep.
But I don't think we should.
Last year, it was reduced from 3% to 2.5%.
Yeah, no, we reduced some stuff, yeah. I don't think we should do it to our employees again. I mean, with the cost of living and cost of gas, price of eggs and water and.
Nobody wants to eliminate it entirely.
That's, oh my Lord. I don't agree with that. Employees work so hard.
Thank you, Mayor. So we had a pretty good conversation about this, and I shared some ideas, and I thanked the mayor at the finance meeting for asking the question about how do we remove these fees. I shared a similar desire to have them removed completely, albeit maybe in a bit more of a disciplined approach over the next year. And we had a pretty good conversation with Donna about how we would implement that in fiscal '28, since we've done this over the last number of years. I don't like saying it this way, but I'm just going to be candid. For 26 years in the 2000s, in the 20-teens and the 2020s, city employees went for a very long time without seeing any increase, one of which is on this dais. Now, that was under a different mindset, different leadership. It was a more Democrat-minded council that didn't see that, and that's a price that we had to pay. We lost a lot of good people because we just didn't fix that. And Mayor, I don't think it's wise to cut it out entirely. By the calculations I had with staff, 0.5%, it comes out to be about 280,000. I don't think we can do a cost of living adjustment every single year. I want to clarify that. And I don't think that's necessarily prudent. And yet, cutting it out entirely, I would wager to guess, Mayor, that that's not a question that's been asked to staff about what would that look like, what's the impact. Because that's theoretically 800 employees that now are hearing that Councilman Mischens is interested in cutting their raise, their cost of living adjustment. It's a really crummy way to go about it, to be honest with you. needless to say, I had a couple of other ideas. I fundamentally believe that if we do need more dollars to make stuff work, I said it last year, we should be looking to tax people from out of town before we look at taxing our neighbors. I floated a couple of ideas, one of which was the hotel tax. Got laughed at by some of my colleagues and some members of the community, and that's fine, that's part of the process, and yet I would point to our neighbors just down the road. Campbell County just did exactly that, actually. They just increased their hotel percentage fee, above ours, mind you. So I think maybe they heard a decent idea and ran with it. If we need more dollars to make this work and prioritize a number of different things, that's something again, submit. We shouldn't be looking to $10 a month on those we represent. We should be looking to folks who are not from here. 1% on the hotel tax is $580,000. $1 increase nightly bed fee. So we currently charge $1, and originally the idea was not really to make cash, it was more to be able to track how many nights are being used in a hotel. If you add $1 to make it $2 a night, so a 3-night stay is $6 on that fee. That's another $430,000. My point in sharing all this is if you go down 0.5% on the cost of living adjustment in an economically hard time for the employees, if we considered a $1 increase on the beds per night, and if we considered a 1% hotel tax adjustment, collectively that's almost $1.3 million. I'm just trying to say, like, there's more ways to go about this than just going right for the jugular of the single mom working in human resources or something like that. And we need to fully explore all of the different options that are at our disposal and not just that. So we've asked for more information to be shared, and I'm looking forward to that conversation, and I'm looking forward to figuring out how we do get rid of this. So, thank you, Mayor.
Mr. Missions.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, one of the questions that I had also asked that wasn't really fully answered was about the other structural pay increases that happened, not in this current fiscal year, but also the previous fiscal year. Because it's pretty obvious when you take the spreadsheets that you all provided that there were some major structural pay increases that happened across the city, not just in the city manager's office. So when I look at that, that's not happening for our citizens. Our citizens aren't getting 2.5% cost of living adjustments every year right now. It's not happening. I think that we've done a good job with city employee salaries. The largest issue that we had in retaining people was in public safety. That has largely been fixed or is being fixed with the progression plan, which has to remain in place because losing experience in public safety is exponential. And we just don't want to see that. But, again, that question really wasn't answered because if anybody's receiving any kind of structural pay increase during the year, they shouldn't then also be getting a cost of living adjustment at the beginning of the next fiscal year. You're doubling up on salary increases there, and that happened without this council approving it. It's very obvious that happened. All you've got to do is look at the public records you all provided. So I would like to know, one, how many dollars in structural pay increases occurred in FY25, and if any occurred in FY26, what the total dollar amount of that was that aren't part of the general wage increase. And let's make it FY24 while we're at it too. Because these decisions should be brought to us. I know you two remember the Corn Ferry Bay study. Mr. Patrick and Mr. Bender weren't here. Who approved the decision of implementing the Corn Ferry Bay study?
I don't, well, council approved the paying of it,
Correct.
and then it really was never implemented.
But it was an implementation that was made by a council vote. And in the last 2 or 3 fiscal years, there's been structural pay changes across the city that haven't been brought before this council. And when structural pay increases happen, that drives up that operating need permanently. So I'd like a full detailed examination of where that's happened, FY '24, FY '25, and then also if any have occurred or are planned to occur in FY '26, above and beyond the approved cost of living adjustments. I think it's critical that we see what's happened there. And I still think that, we should consider looking at that, not touching the public safety pay progression plan, but just put it on the list. We need to look at reducing spending, not increasing taxes elsewhere to offset our need to reduce spending. Tax and spend policies, no good. We need to focus on reducing the spending, putting our citizens first, and reducing the burden on them.
Ms. Reed?
Ms. Wood, what were you just referencing? What was that council never actually took action on?
Well, Corn Ferry, council voted to pay for the study. And then trying to implement it, which we never had the money for, but whatever was put in, that became the COLA or the years of service funding. All that was part of the budget. It was approved as part of the budget.
Just to be clear, Corn Ferry is a consulting firm that completed a compensation study on city employee pay some
Correct.
number of years ago.
Right.
Okay, but the request that was just made about, so it's still, we were still a city manager form of government at that point, city council manager form of government. So it's still, it was and still is now the manager's prerogative and in his purview to approve pay increases as he or she sees fit without the permission or the approval of council, yes or no? Has that always been the way?
Yes.
Okay, so.
As long as it didn't require additional funding.
Correct. So I'm not exactly sure what's being asked here. That needs to be, that's never changed, it's never been different. So I'm not exactly sure what's wrong here. That needs to be presented for approval or examination, except for that managers have done their job in the past per what they're allowed to do and continue to do. Mr. Friedman, am I wrong?
No, council appropriates money for particular purposes, and the manager, upon that appropriation, the approval of the budget or an amendment is authorized to expend it.
Right. So demanding that things be turned over for examination unless something was illegally done and outside the purview of the manager's office, I'm not exactly sure what we're being asked to turn over here, or y'all are, or what the purpose that has to do with anything in the budget that we're discussing, Mayor. So.
Get people's hopes up. We have a lot of public work people out there that's doing the jobs every day. They do hard work. And it's been mentioned that they was gonna get a cost of living increase this year. And to go back on that, that's a smack in the face. Because a lot of people, when you promise them a raise, make plans. They make plans to use those funds, no matter how great it is or how small it is. We got families that have made plans to use the funds that we was gonna. Yes, Ms. Timmer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to speak to your point just briefly, but I have another point that I raised my hand for.
Yes, ma'am.
And I appreciate that, but Mr. Mayor, this council has not promised a raise.
It's been
No,
mentioned.
But it has been mentioned because
Right.
our discussions should be transparent,
Yes.
accountable, and public. And this is the only budget work session in which we get to have this discussion. So I sympathize with what you are saying, but this council has not promised anything. What has happened is a budget in bruise in which the city manager's budget has been presented to the public, not in which this council has had a continuation of transparent and accountable discussion regarding our priorities in the budget. So that distinction is significant, and those jurisdictional distinctions are absolutely significant because it has been lacking in the budget process for the last 2 years. Back to the slides. And this is coming out of finance today, so I would love to have a discussion and understanding of where the chair of finance is in pulling these funds for these specific purposes, since this is coming out of finance. So if you're comfortable,
Where it's not coming out of finance, we just had a conversation related to this.
okay, that's helpful, because this is, again, I don't have these slides yet. This is the first that I am hearing about this discussion. It came out of finance today. And we're supposed to vote on the first reading of the budget in our next meeting. So when we're looking at this and we're trying to bring our priorities to the table in the one work session that we have regarding the budget, I would welcome understanding, if you're comfortable sharing, where our colleagues are in regards to the trash fees and the DMV license fees. And I specifically ask, and I'll put my cards on the table for a number of reasons, but one being, would we rather pull $700,000 from major building repairs, or would we rather pull this from the question of the property toolkit, or the playground, or the downtown improvement, or the library? Because we have a deferred maintenance problem. So if we're looking at pulling from pay-go funds for these purposes, why is that taboo in the discussion of special education, alternate education, and nutrition? It isn't compatible. So help me understand where this is coming from, where y'all would like to go with it. I'm happy to negotiate on this. I think there's opportunity here. But I would welcome having a real discussion on that, because, again, those are incongruent kind of lines of thought from where I'm coming from, so help me understand it.
Mr. Ferrari?
Mayor, I would offer for everyone watching that I look at this in multiple ways. First and foremost, if you go back and watch the conversation at some point, you'll see that first and foremost, I said, back one side, please, Donna. Thank you. I said I wasn't too keen on the idea of going into debt for a vehicle. There's a conversation about, well, we have done that before. It's been adopted. There was conversation about why that actually makes sense over the course of the vehicle and so on and so forth. There's that factor. Forward one slide, please. This debt service reserve, the 1.7 here, it was discussed that, just like it was here, that it hasn't been used. And so instead of sitting that fund there for another year where it's not being used for any purpose other than risk mitigation, this allows us to do another reduction for a fee waiver. I expressed concerns over the major building repairs and improvements because, again, those are things that have been kicked down the road for about 20 years, and now over the last 4 or 5 years, this council has made an effort to turn that tide, and it is a massive ship. So, to answer, I believe Ms. Timmer's attempt to see where at least the
Thank you.
conversation went, that's, in my mind, that is congruent with my approach on, I want to know where the schools would be on how they would prioritize it. More information is power. If we want to reconsider other items, then we can do that as well. It speaks to my point of that there are many levers we can pull, and it doesn't have to be so binary as the custodian now doesn't get a 2.5% cost of living adjustment. Liberty consistently gives cost of living adjustments, consistently, in December. And they're always hiring folks. There's nothing stopping someone working in the city of Lynchburg going over to Liberty or going to Hobby Lobby where they're making 18 an hour starting. All that to say, I believe that is a congruent approach to what I've shared thus far and continues to move the budget conversation forward. And as we've seen, there is certainly nothing stopping us from meeting more and going into this. I would submit that is a congruent approach, Mayor. I would conclude by saying we do have other items we want to get to.
Yes.
If there are other things that folks want to say on this, by all means, continue. I don't intend to cut this off. I just did want to submit that I think we've got a lot of this on the table about what we're looking for unless something has been missed.
And with the schools, they got $30 million. This is on top of the $30 million.
That's their separate pots.
Yes. But they can work through this.
They can't apply that to the nutrition.
You got $30 million to spend. You can make adjustments.
They can't use the
bond-funded. And on top of that, the state of Virginia hadn't said what they're gonna give them either, yet. So if we're giving them 1.6, and the state of Virginia give them 1.6, they should be able to make it. Yes, ma'am. And that's, we gotta move on.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and to the point of we have to move on, that's part of why I asked that we defer these other items, so we can have this discussion, because I think it's valuable. And Mr. Mischens touched on this, that $30 million is bond funded.
Yes.
That is capital improvement. That's not nutrition, that's not alternate education, that's not special education. And we are behind in those areas because of the previous school administration. We've got to get caught up in those areas. We've got to fix them. Mr. Feraldi, thank you for bringing forward your view on this discussion. I would love, ideal world, I'm gonna have to compromise on this. I would love to find a way to get rid of the trash fees, the DMV license fees, and fully fund the schools. That would be my dream scenario. I have told you the areas that for me are willingly on the chopping block to make that happen. I would like to work with this council towards some kind of compromise within that realm of possibility. The VRS funds, as far as the potential savings to the school, can be moved around and shifted by the Department of Education. There is no guarantee that that full funding will be available, but if we count on a portion of that, I believe we can still fill that gap and address these two efforts for the taxpayers. That's what I'm putting forward. That's what I would like to work with this council on, and I hope that we can have that discussion before the first reading of the budget. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Briefly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, I just, my request for the information still stands. I'm sure if we look back in the minutes in 2018 and 19, we'll find that City Council did vote to approve the implementation of that Corn Ferry pay study. Those were structural base pay changes beyond the general wage increase. I would like to know how that's happening in the last 3 fiscal years, because it's obvious that it is happening in the spreadsheets you all provided. I saw employees not in the city manager's office with some pretty substantial pay increases. And, if we have that much room in our operating budget where we're making those decisions, if we have that much room in our operating budget to be able to buy almost $1 million worth of portable radios at the end of the year, that's cause for concern, right? We shouldn't be just creating these pots of money with taxpayer funds that we can just take out of whenever we want to apply to this or to that, or to create these structural base pay changes. Council ultimately has the authority. The pay philosophy in the Employee Policies and Procedures Manual says it was adopted by council, not by the city manager. Those are our decisions. Those are structural pay changes that increase the operating expenditures for the taxpayers, directly affects exactly how much we have to take from them. Understand, when we tax people, it's not a request. We're taking money from them. They have to do it. And we need to be mindful of that. The answer is not tax swaps. It's reducing spending. That's what we need to do. We need to figure out how to reduce the operating expenditures, sharpen the pencils, get back to work. I'm very disappointed that we only have one budget work session for the fiscal year 2027 budget. I would also like to know, question that I have, when has there ever been a budget calendar with only one budget work session? When has that ever happened before? Because what it feels to me like is that we're just expected to rubber stamp this thing. And I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna rubber stamp taking more money from our taxpayers.
Well, you know what to say about assumptions.
So that's where I'm at with it. We need to figure out how to reduce some of this spending. I'd like to know how some of these decisions were made that have put us in this position and increased the structural base pay of so many of our employees. And when I get answers like, let me see what it said here. The clarification was addressed in the city manager's letter to council on February 24, 2026. It was not. I asked a very specific question that was never answered. And I'm not going to tolerate being dodged with specific questions that deserve specific answers. Because I asked those questions on behalf of the taxpayers. Thank you.
Moving on. Number 4, report of graves at the end of Smith Street, Lynchburg Union Cemetery. Mr. Ted Delaney.
Puns anytime you want to talk about the cemetery.
I thought that might come up tonight. Thank you.
Is it for Mr. Delaney?
Really quick. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you yesterday for your wonderful hospitality for all those RS Payne fourth graders at the museum.
Thank you.
It was a
I
little
appreciate
wild in
that.
the beginning, but you helped get it under control, and I appreciate it.
We had 240 RS Payne students in the past 48 hours and loved every minute of it.
And
Thank you.
And you made it here.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you. So Mayor Taylor, Vice Mayor Deemer, members of council, I'm here to update you on our research on the mysterious graves in Deerington at the end of Smith Street, which, as it turns out, are an actual cemetery called Lynchburg Union Cemetery. So I'm going to share that with you here today. So just to recap, this is the map to pinpoint the location of the graves. What you're looking at there in the middle is the Deerington neighborhood off of 5th Street. Old City Cemetery is to the east, just across Fishing Creek and the railroad tracks. And then Lynchburg General Hospital is to the right through the woods on the west side. And in that thicket of woods right there, that's where these graves are, just so you know exactly where we're talking about. If you drive to the end of Smith Street, which is one of the longest streets that goes right through the Deerington neighborhood, and you go all the way to the end of the cul-de-sac, you're going to want to find these graves, park there, and then walk over into the woods that you see here. Pretty dense. I recommend you don't go now. Go in the winter before ticks and other things are out. But if you walk over into that woods, not very far, you will find a cemetery. We know that the cemetery was established in 1925. Here's a flyer that was produced to circulate in the neighborhood and in the city to advertise the sale of plots in the cemetery. And as you see there, it was titled Lynchburg Union Cemetery, and the chief broker for it was a man named Richard Roberts. You'll also notice in the text here that there's a reference to Pollard Street. Pollard Street was the name of Smith Street before Deerington was annexed into the city, so same area, just different names. Campbell County. And it was 1926, literally a year later, this was all annexed into the city. Here's a newspaper advertisement that basically repeats the same things in the flyer, showing similar language, and the official grand opening in November of 1925. So the owners of the cemetery are two men, John Franklin Sr., and this picture that's on the right is of Fifth Street looking toward downtown in about 1930. You can make out Fifth Street Baptist Church kind of on the left there. And then the building that's to the left of the church is John Franklin's coal, wood, and ice shop, or business. That's no longer standing, but Fifth Street Baptist is still there. And his partner in the cemetery was a man named Richard Roberts, who was a railroad porter, depot porter, and a clerk. So these are the two men that started the cemetery that's in Darrington, called Lynchburg Union Cemetery. So here's what we found about the burials that are in the cemetery. Here's one gravestone for a man named Rad Pendleton, who was buried there in 1931. All the burials in the cemetery are African American. The earliest one was 1927, and the last known one was 1935, so a pretty limited window of burials. We've only found 10 so far, although there may be more. There are only 4 grave markers that have names and family names and dates that have survived that we've identified, although there is some more plot curbing to indicate there may have been other plots, maybe other graves that aren't marked, or they may have been marked with something like a wooden headboard or cross that's long gone. The cemetery closed in about 1935, probably because of a combination of these factors. So there was the Great Depression, a lot of financial stress on families. The city cemetery reopened to the general public in 1929 after being closed for 5 years. And then John Franklin, one of those two founders of the cemetery, died in 1935 himself. So probably a combination of all those things. The cemetery just seemed to have been abandoned, and there don't seem to be any more graves or burials there after about 1935. So this is what it looks like midsummer. Thickly forested, lots of vines, really classic abandoned cemetery, something that has not had any attention. This photo is from a 2023 Hurt and Profit report that they did for the Virginia DHR. You can see that the largest stone is still standing there in the center. This is an example of one of the markers that's fallen over. Thankfully, we could get the name off of it from the side, but it's fallen over, been fallen over, and it's just right now lying on the ground. These are some photos that I took more recently, just about a month ago. This is looking towards Lynchburg General Hospital, so looking toward the west. And if you look in the very, very background, you can see the tower at Lynchburg General, so that's kind of where we are. You can make out some broken pieces of gravestone in there, some broken pieces of curbing, but not a whole lot that indicates this is a real cemetery, just kind of some random graves. I'm sure at one time this was all cleared and looked more professional. It's been abandoned maybe for 7,500 years. Here's another view, just looking slightly more south. This is the largest tombstone that's still extant. It's for a woman named Sadie Lee, who died in 1927. There also are some daffodils you can sort of see in the distance there. This photo here shows you the precarious condition of some of the stones that are there. Here's a tree that fell, but it fell just inches shy of breaking these marble headstones that are there. So this is very typical of what happens when people literally walk away from a cemetery and they don't do any maintenance for decades. These are stones of the Callan family. So one of the ways that we were able to identify people buried in the cemetery is by looking at death certificates from this period. This is a standard, typical Virginia death certificate from, I think, 1930, maybe? Is that the date on there, 1930? And if you look at the very bottom, every death certificate will tell you the place of interment. And you all notice there that's typed out Union Cemetery, so that's referring to the cemetery. Now, this particular person, John Dudley Hunter, was a young man who died of typhoid fever who has no marker, but because of this death certificate and that notice there, we know that he's there, just does not have a marker. All right, so as part of the Hurt and Profit survey that was done in 2023, this is the boundary of the area that they surveyed, and this would show the largest extent of the graves that are visible on the surface in the woods. If you overlay this with the city's GIS parcel viewer map, this shows you the parcel lines. And then if you add owners' names, owners of those parcels, that's what you see here. And so what we're talking about, the graves we're talking about, lie pretty squarely in the center of this block, totally forested now. But the chief takeaway here is that these are all private pieces of property owned privately. And according to GIS, every property owner has been paying their property taxes. They're all current. Nobody's delinquent. Some are owned by individuals, like the Randa Lynn Gordon there in the center that probably owns most of the cemetery property. That's an individual, but others are entities like a law firm or an estate representative, most of which are out of this, outside of Lynchburg. I think a couple are in Texas, a couple are in North Carolina. There may be descendants of people buried there who are now the owners. We just don't know the connection between the owners' names you see here and anybody connected to the cemetery, either buried there or Mr. Franklin or Mr. Roberts, the original owners. So just to recap, following up on the request from council from January, the cemetery is entirely on private property. There are at least 10 people buried there, maybe more. All were historically designated as African American, and there are no known military veterans, no markers that were government issued, and no suggestion from the archival research that there's a veteran there. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have or anything else.
Mr. Ferrari?
I guess it just begs the question, what can we do? I mean, I saw the city-owned property just adjacently, maybe could we move the headstones and have something done there? What could we do?
Yeah, so you can remove graves from a cemetery, but it's long and it's complicated because you have to get a circuit court judge to authorize it. You have to give notice in the newspaper. You have to attempt to reach out to descendants. So it can be done. It's complicated and it's expensive because then you have to hire either archaeologists or funeral directors to actually exhume the graves. You've got to relocate them, somewhere that's responsible. So that could be done. Sadly, neither state code nor city code has any provision for requiring a certain level of maintenance of a cemetery or of graves. State code and city code just say you can have a cemetery, and as long as you don't do anything that's willfully malicious, you can basically just let it become this. And there's very little that we could require when it's private.
Do we know if Richmond allows a city to adopt regulations on how to maintain a separate cemetery?
So, from what I remember from either our charter or our state code, I think we have the ability to regulate.
Or enough to look into it?
Enough to look into it, but the problem with this is finding out who is responsible, and that is going to take on the expense, take on the effort, so this area there, it's a very complicated title that's over there, and it's very, very old. So that's the thing, you would be dealing with heirs and individuals, some of which who may not even know that the property is on a cemetery. So if it is something you all wanted to look at as to what can be done for, preservation or whatnot, just like Ted said, that's an option, but it's going to be expensive. And it's going to be a process we'd have to look into and bring back.
Well, I would just conclude by saying we should at least know what the options are, so we can make an informed decision. I mean, there's people buried there and it looks terrible, so we should look into it. Not saying we do X, Y, or Z. I don't even know what the options are or how much it costs, but we should be informed.
Ms. Timmer?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Feraldi. I agree with Mr. Feraldi's sentiment on this, and Matt, you touched on this, but we don't even know if the owners know that there's a cemetery there. So I'm wondering what outreach has been made or can be made to the owners of the property to engage in a discussion to just understand where they're at with it. If it is a descendant, if it's not a descendant, what interest they have in the property.
I'm sorry. We have the addresses from GIS and from the assessor's office. It's a mailing address, so we can certainly reach out. I guess that there's no guarantee that they'll respond. They might think, oh, the city is poking around about a cemetery on my property, and they may not be interested, but that's certainly something we can try.
Okay, and also, thank you for your work on this. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Ms. Reed?
Thank you.
So two things. One, I know that Ms. Dyke Harsley had asked questions, so of course we want to let her know the historical information that we have found so far. I think that was who, originally asked the question, so I'm sure she'd be interested to know this so far. But also, if maybe we also simultaneously look into some African-American historical societies that may have funding, like grant funding, that might be willing to help in whatever preservation opportunities that would be available, because there may be some money available in some type of grants for this purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah,
good idea.
Dr. Wilder.
Yes, thank you for the information. I wasn't aware of that cemetery. I am aware of the White Rock Cemetery. We unearthed it about 20-plus years ago. Laurel Munson unearthed it about 20-plus years ago, and this owned by Jackson Street Methodist Church. So we, over the years, the past 20 years, they've struggled in maintaining that. That's hundreds of graves, but mainly because of Laurel Munson, who passed a couple years ago. We had a Laurel Munson Day in July the 17th, and you suggested to me maybe do it in a different time because it was so hot out there. Delegate Wendell Walker came out there the last time to help us mow some of the grass. But a lot of the Lynchburg City volunteers have really done an amazing job. The fire department, sheriff's office, they've been coming out there to help them keep that clean. It's about 20 acres or so. It's a lot. It's hundreds of graves out there. But when we first went there, it was a jungle. It was worse than that. It was a jungle. And she, 80 years old, mainly single-handedly, pretty much, the Lynchburg College students, unearthed all that stuff. And that was a beautiful work, and it still needs a lot more support. I get complaints all the time because now some people are riding some dirt bikes over there, so we've talked to the police about that numerous times as well, and you get complaints as well. But they always need funding, they need support, they need people to help volunteer, because the church is not just, not able to maintain all of that, because there's so many property, so they rely on volunteers to help keep their property clean.
Okay, thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Item number 5, removing family planning service exemption from abortion zoning ordinance. Mr. Faradi.
Thank you, Mayor. Simply put, the abortion zoning ordinance, I was adamant that I would support it if we removed the exemption for family planning services. That was an exemption that was added in after the vote of, all 7 of us supported sending that concept to the planning commissions. It was added after we took that vote, which is why I shifted. I do believe it should be removed, and I look forward to the discussion at a future meeting and vote. That's my presentation.
Yes, sir.
Pretty clear cut.
Mr. Mitchell.
Just to be clear, Mr. Friedman, we'd have to send it because it's a zoning ordinance amendment. It would have to go back to the planning commission, correct?
So if yes, that's correct.
Okay.
What I would ask Councilman Fraldi and City Council, if there is a desire to do this, to give city staff an opportunity maybe to draft something for an upcoming work session and for you all to look at, and then direct that to go to planning commission, the same process as did with the abortion clinic ordinance. That way, we would be able to have an idea of what you all are specifically looking forward to go to planning.
Matt, I appreciate that. I just want to strike that last line. That's it. With the exemption to family planning services.
Okay.
So it's pretty straightforward. I mean, we could do it right now if we really wanted to, but the point is, we could remove it.
Is there, because it's an amendment to the zoning ordinance, it does have to go to planning?
Correct.
I guess for our purposes, is there any objection to what
Yes.
Mr. Faraldi has described?
Yes.
I like family planning.
Mayor,
Yes, sir.
Mr. City Attorney, is there a definition for family planning services in the city ordinance?
No, not that I'm aware of. It would be treated as I understand it, as an outpatient care clinic. I think that's what it's treated as.
So with that being said, I'll transition to my second item, because they are connected. Well,
Mayor, with
that's
the
fine.
first
I'll
conversation.
yield. Just let me finish.
Okay.
They are connected.
Mr. Mayor, we have to deal with one thing at a time.
Let him,
That's-
go
Point of
ahead,
order.
Chris.
Point of order.
One thing at a time is our rule.
The rules of procedure clearly say that council must deal with one thing at a time. That is what the rules say. My point of order is-
Come back to that, Chris. Go-
We'll get to it.
We'll come back to you briefly. Go ahead, Marty.
Well,
Thank you,
what-
Mr. Mayor.
Mayor, I
Yes,
still
yes.
have the floor,
Okay.
if you don't mind.
Okay. Stay to the subject.
I'll stay to the subject.
Okay.
I believe there should be a determination to remove that exemption. And I expect that at the next meeting for us to take a vote on whether or not we ask the planning commission to consider that.
Okay,
It's pretty simple.
that I can do.
Yes, sir.
Now, the way it'll be worded is as a resolution to go to the planning commission. Okay.
Okay. Submissions?
Also, Matt, what governs the definitions? Wasn't there a discussion, I think, about the American Planning Association definitions?
There is, it's not in the minutes.
Oh, it's missing from the minutes. Okay. So I believe there was also an email, I think, that discusses that, where the definition in the American Planning Association guidelines is actually incorporated, because doesn't our zoning ordinance actually incorporate the American Planning Association?
I think it
framework?
does. It's been a little bit since I've looked at that. But what I think you're referring to is, yes, it does, but what I understand Councilman Feraldi is referring to is the list of definitions that are in the ordinance versus, say, comparing it to now what we've defined as abortion clinics. So that is what I understood that to mean. But yes, it does incorporate it in there, and I do think there's an administrative code section that may define family planning services as well.
And I believe, I'm actually looking at an email from you on February 17th right now, where it says that you believe the city zoning administrator will be able to draw from the standards in the American Planning Association land-based classification system, or land-based classification standards, to, when trying to decipher the meaning of family planning services. That those are your words right
That's
here,
correct.
February 17th.
In the absence of any guidance or definition, council and staff would have to draw from that in defining what it is.
Now, so with that being the case, then could it be accurate to say that there is a definition of family planning services incorporated by way of the American Planning Association's land-based classification standards into our zoning ordinance?
It could. I don't know what the specific definition is of it under there. I think that's the big question, is how that reference you cited defines it.
And
But yes, it would, but it's not as part of the general list of definitions in the zoning ordinance.
And then another question that I have that I think is really something that we need to consider here. I've got real concerns about the legislative history that this creates because of Mr. Feraldi's multiple erratic social media posts, which is a common theme, where in a short period of time, he was specifically targeting one entity, one business, that rather than using a regulated land use function as required by zoning law, if we were to change that with all the legislative history that is created, is there any kind of risk because of Mr. Feraldi's social media posting to potentially weaken our position with that legislative history, with all the social media posts that he's created, where it almost essentially inviting an organization like Planned Parenthood to sue the city to try to put an abortion clinic in the city?
I don't think so. I think the way Councilman Feraldi has presented this is really to strike a portion of a definition in the zoning ordinance. Certainly, if
If I
Planned
may,
Parenthood was.
it's not a
Well,
definition.
Hang
I have
on.
the floor still.
If Planned Parenthood was to sue the city, over the posts, certainly they could cite it. But as long as there's a legitimate, rational reason for excluding it that's connected to land use, And it's gonna go to planning commission for them to review and discuss. It's not something that is gonna be done solely on council's volition without study or review.
Sure.
As was the abortion clinic ordinance. You know, I don't think that would be the end-all, be-all in voiding, say, the abortion clinic ordinance or striking the family planning services exception from it.
I've just got some concerns that we could potentially weaken what's in there by changing this, and I'll be requesting an opinion from Mr. Hetzler, who's a subject matter expert in this, to provide to all the council and publicly, and that way we can include that with the record whenever the decision is made next week. Or
Understood.
in 2 weeks.
Understood.
Ms. Timmer?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to reserve most of my comments for next week, mostly for the sake of time, but I believe that striking that language alters the rational basis and weakens the legal defensibility, but also shifts the purpose of the ordinance altogether and changes the conversation. Not to mention Mr. Feraldi's consistently changing opinion on the ordinance itself, which I'd be happy to cite and reference timestamps that are readily available online. So I'll be saving most of my remarks for next week, but there is not a loophole as it stands in the context of how it was written for the purpose in which it was articulated and the intent behind the original ordinance.
Mr. Deemer?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate the work done by my colleagues on council to thread the needle to get to where we are, to reduce the risk of litigation. I think any and all attempts to move it around and the changing directions that have come and gone and ultimately do create confusion about the issue, which has been very carefully studied by all our experts, from Tom to the family foundation attorney, to get us to where we are. And I count as unfriendly any attempt to try to bring this back up and create a risk of litigation, because I'm not at all interested in targeting a single industry. In our zoning ordinances, we don't do that. That's not what we do, and you told me that's not what we do. So I'm going to stick with that advice, and I hope council will stay firm on this too, because a lot of very hard work was done to get a historic piece of legislation ordinance through council and on our books. So let's not mess around with that.
Ms. Reed?
I feel like this is like a personal thing against Councilman Feraldi versus just trying to look at it objectively. If you pull up the Planned Parenthood website, they actually say the phrase family planning services. I was on the pregnancy center board for 3 years, and the executive director over there, and she and I, Jane Carroll and I, had a long conversation prior to this vote, prior to this going through, and she and I talked extensively about the fact that that phrase was a concern because abortion clinics, not just Planned Parenthood, but just general clinics that provide abortions, do use that phrase family planning services to conceal what they actually offer. So that by keeping that phrase in there, it can very much be used, they can hide what they do under the guise of that phrase, which I think is the intent, I believe, in what Councilman Feraldi was trying to protect us from. Keeping it in there actually is counterproductive of the intent of what the resolution was for. So it shouldn't be personal against him. If you can be objective, it actually strengthens the argument by removing those words, because someone could actually say that they are a family planning services center or clinic and really be hiding what they're doing underneath that phrase. And to what Mr. Friedman said, they have to come to the Planning Commission anyway to get approval, but by taking out that phrase and allowing it, it's going to be more stringent. In my opinion, I think if we just have to be objective, taking those few words out is not going to harm anything. If anything, it just makes it ties it up more firmly, in my opinion. So,
Ms. Timmer.
We actually spoke to this on the night of the rezoning, and I spoke to it specifically, and how zoning works. That zoning regulates the actual use and function, not the name. And I'm going to be submitting my written comments, because I prepared those comments in advance to Alicia for the minutes today, in the context of this discussion, because it outlines some of those concerns and elements. I'll bring it back up in the following week. Nothing personal against Mr. Feraldi on this. I do not believe that it strengthens the ordinance. I believe it weakens the defensibility and changes the rational basis for the ordinance to begin with. And additionally, Mr. Feraldi has been on the record contradicting himself multiple times in the context of this rezoning amendment. But every single time, the common thread is to delay, alter, or change in a way that would fundamentally undermine that defensibility. So I will not be supporting this amendment. I'm happy to go on the record politically, and however that ties to the whole pro-life, pro-choice discussion publicly. I believe that this undermines the rational basis of that amendment. It weakens the legal defensibility, and it is a 180 from Mr. Feraldi's original stance on the amendment to begin with.
We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Yeah, Mr. Missions, we got to move on.
This is one of the most important discussions we can have, Mr. Mayor. I think that it's critical that we get this right, and I'm going to read something into the record here. So this is what we adopted. Definitions. The following terms shall have the meanings established in this section unless specifically modified by the provisions of the applicable section of the zoning ordinance. 1, abortion clinic means a facility other than a hospital where any person administers to or causes to be taken by a woman any drug, medicine, or any other substance other than contraceptive methods that are approved by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, or use any instrument, device, or means with intent to knowingly destroy the life of an embryo or fetus in his or her mother's womb, but in all cases excluding family planning services. The definition covers everything that could be done to perform an elective abortion procedure. It doesn't matter what someone calls themselves. The use is based on what is done on the parcel. Is that correct, Mr. Friedman?
That's what you're regulating, is the use on the parcel.
Right. So to try to, I understand that there are people that voted against this in this room that probably didn't want to. I understand that there are people in this room that didn't show up for the vote that probably wanted to. And, you know, this is not, I feel like this is, and point of order, Mr. Mayor, I'd appreciate the profanity from Mr. Feraldi to just.
You know why she wasn't here.
Chris.
Then address his
Mr. Mayor.
inappropriate comments about why Ms. Reed wasn't here, and he knows better.
Nothing inappropriate about what I said.
She actually
Fact-
has a job, and he may
Fact
not.
is a fact, Mr. Mayor.
Well, then tell her
The
right
fact
back.
is a fact.
I was out of town on a work trip.
The
It's
fact
so,
is,
it's so,
you weren't here.
bad.
All right.
The fact is you weren't here. I didn't mention that. You
Okay.
just mentioned that. I just simply stated, and I didn't even mention your name. I said there's probably some people in this room that voted against this that probably
Why are
didn't
you
want
scared
to.
to say Ms.
There's
Reed's
probably
name?
some
Why don't you own
people in
it?
this room that weren't here that wish they would have been here. But the reality is,
State
we
your
don't want
facts,
to.
state
I
your
am
facts and
stating
leave
my
it alone.
facts. I am stating my facts. And
Hold
what I'm
on, Ms.
saying
Timmer.
is the definition covers it. This was prepared by an attorney from the Family Foundation. They are subject matter experts.
He
Okay.
didn't include this line. That's the point.
Yes, he did include this
He
line.
didn't.
Ms. Timmer.
He approved the line. This was approved by the attorney from the Family Foundation. I'm satisfied with what it says. I also am totally satisfied with what Mr. Martin did in his work. And I think we don't need to turn this into something political, which is what we're trying to do here.
Okay.
There's no
I thought we're
way,
not supposed to speak to
based
intent,
on
man.
this,
Okay.
based on this definition, that following our zoning ordinance, that somebody can come in and do something under disguise because of what this says, because we regulate use. That's what it is.
Thank you. Ms. Timmer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've been trying to stay away from tangents. I'm gonna hop on one for just a moment. I am truly confused at what about the statement, someone who wasn't here, who probably wanted to be here, assuming that the desire was to be here but unable. I'm confused why that is so offensive.
Okay.
And a reason for outburst. And the
There's
pat.
3 letters in that word, Kurt, not 4.
But I have a point to that, Mr. Mayor. I do. Because there is a consistent distraction from the actual issue. And Mr. Mayor, this is significant.
This is coming up in 2 weeks.
I know. Mr. Mayor, this is significant. To unravel this and reopen it when there has been 180 changes, and we're looking at the May 30th primary,
Point of order, I thought we're not supposed to do politics on here.
to rewrite.
Point of order needs to be addressed, Mayor.
Fine, rule on it, and I'll move on. That's fine. I won't.
Don't mention May 30th.
But the timeline's significant.
Don't
To
mention May
move on.
30th. Talk to your point about the abortion thing.
To reopen this when there's been a 180 change on perspective, when there are legal opinions from experts that are contrary to what we are hearing from Mr. Feraldi, and the upcoming email that I know he wants to open, I don't care, that's fine. But, Mr. Mayor, I'm just asking you to pay attention. Pay attention. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Removing attorney-client privileges from email correspondence.
Thank you, Mayor. And speaking to this presentation, there is an email from the city attorney, subject line, RE exemption, April 28th, 2026 at 1:34 PM, which speaks exactly why this is important. But unfortunately, and I mean this respectfully, it is under the veil of attorney-client privilege because it is the city attorney's opinion. Now, if this council is so adamant to be transparent, so adamant to be honest with the folks we're supposed to be representing, and so people can understand why the previous item is so important, vote to release attorney-client privilege on this email. Now, I'll note, Mr. Mayor, we've had experience on this council where instead of doing this the proper way, like I'm doing, by requesting we release attorney-client privilege, I could have just copied it and posted it to Facebook. I could have just done it as a press release. I could have just released it and say, gotcha, gotcha. The contents of this email from the words under B, and I promise I'm not sharing anything, but it's just so we all know for the record. From the words under B through the parentheses of federal, state, etc. So it's not even the whole email, it's just a few paragraphs, and it speaks exactly why I'm seeking to remove this exemption. Because there are holes in what was adopted. What I voted to send to Planning Commission is different than what came out of it. And removing this exemption, which is spoken to in this very email, makes it very clear cut. If you don't want the public to know, then vote against it. That's why these two items are so important. We'll see in 2 weeks.
Ms. Timmer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have no issue releasing the email. I actually am, well, I think Mr. Missions will speak to this in a moment. I have no issues opening the email and attorney-client privilege. I do not agree with a lot of Mr. Freeman on a number of legal issues, and that comes up at the dais all the time. So there are a plethora of legal opinions on this matter. Mr. Feraldi and Mr. Friedman are often very aligned in their legal analysis, and I tend to differ with that and consult with other legal expertise. So I have absolutely no issue with this email being released.
Mr. Missions.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to kind of amend this and say, you know what? Let's release attorney-client privilege on every written piece of communication between Mr. Friedman and council and the city manager, since January 1st, 2023.
Love it.
If we're going to do transparency, that's what we should do, is just release that attorney-client privilege on all those communications. We have the authority to do it, and I'd be happy to support that.
Mayor?
Mr.
Mayor,
Faradi.
Just for clarity's sake, what were the ranges of those dates?
January 1st, 2023 forward.
To today? All attorney-client privilege?
Absolutely.
So including the lawsuits against you have against the city?
What lawsuit do I have against the city, Mr.?
Do you want
Geraldo?
access to his attorney-client
No, I'm
privilege?
asking you a question.
I'm asking you, do you want attorney-client
I'm
privilege to the
asking-
emails related to
I'm
your
asking
case?
you a question.
All right,
Answer the
gentlemen.
question, Marty.
There would have to be a lawsuit against the city to answer
No,
your
there
question.
was one and you lost it, and there are emails sitting out there that you want, sir.
No, there aren't actually.
Okay, Chris, let's go. Item
Not
number,
friendly for what it's worth.
item number 8, Mr. Missions,
So,
AR
I'm
legislation.
willing to move on from that and hold that to the next work session.
Okay.
Because we've
No,
got to.
if he wants it, he can request it in the appropriate manner.
Yes. Roll call. Roll call.
Who's first?
Mr. Faradi?
Thank you. I do have 4 very brief items. First and foremost, I did want to commend the registrar's office. I called the folks over there, and I did say, look, I disagree vehemently that this is even happening today with the election, with the referendum vote. However, we had results out of Lynchburg quickly. We had a very efficient day across the board, at least in Ward 4. At the new precinct, a couple minor things off of Old Grays Mill to adjust for next time, but it really went very well. So I just wanted to commend all of them. It's always a very long day, and so just wanted to recognize them. Secondly, I was told by the high school band director at Heritage, and I forget what the competition was, but they want a band competition. And it's so often that we hear about athletics and not so much about the arts. And as a band kid, I just wanted to highlight their success. Okay, 2 requests very quickly. First and foremost, we had a memo about an item I requested related, along with Councilmember Miskins, with how we do the unrelated rule with living in housing just across the board. No more than 3 unrelated individuals. We got some answers back, and I appreciate that. We had some data about how Blacksburg has amended over the years. There was a desire to change it in Lynchburg some time ago. We hadn't. I'd like to take that to the next step. What are those options? Let's schedule it for a work session. Keep that conversation going about what some options might be about expanding that slightly. And the reason I bring it up is because if we are truly in the housing crisis that we're in, we need to be finding creative solutions. And if we're limiting a 4-bedroom apartment to 3 unrelated individuals, we're kind of shooting ourselves in the foot. So let's just keep that in mind. Finally, the last piece. I had been requesting, and thank you, Kent, for sending it. I had requested a lot of information on a development going in Windhurst in Ward 4 related to a plot right next to the Summit. It's my understanding that 100+ apartments are going in because it's another by right situation. So I appreciate the information you've shared. I don't know what the direct ask, so maybe I need to connect with you guys offline, but here's my point. I believe this council would not have approved 100+ apartments, maybe not in Windhurst, but definitely not on Enterprise Drive. And so it's for that reason, we need to be really reconsidering our by right situations, because there's nothing we can do about that one. And it is going to change the nature of the neighborhood, especially for the residents who just expanded in the Summit. Having 100+ apartments totally changes that dynamic. So I would like us to, whether it's preemptive ahead of the comprehensive plan or not, I don't know. I'll connect with you guys, but to my colleagues, this is something that we do need to address. Something of that size and scale should not be going in without any oversight of council. Thank you. Very long-winded.
Ms. Reed?
Yes, thank you. Okay. So one thing I'm just going to say, because it's important, and I know we've had a lot of these in the last maybe year or two, we've had a lot of motorcycle fatalities around the city and region. So I guess I'm wearing my mom hat, I don't know, but please Be careful riding your motorcycles, y'all. Wear your helmets, be safe, slow down, and also everybody that sees motorcycles around them, be cautious, look out for bike riders, because we want everybody to be safe. Also, this Friday, from the 1st to the 9th, starts a program at the Texas Inn, or the Tea Room as we lovingly call it. They're starting a program called the Tech for Vets. If you go to the local tea room or Texas Inn, if you bring old technology that you're not using and bring it to them, they have a program where it benefits veterans. So bring your old Blackberries or flip phones or whatever you have that you're not using and turn it in, and they will use it for our veterans. Also, I want to thank Liberty University for participating in LU Serve Day this last Saturday. They were all over the city. You probably saw lots of young people with red T-shirts around the city. I know we had them over at the Boys and Girls Club doing some really helpful things for us, and I know you had them over at the Jubilee Center. They were all over the place. They were picking up trash off the streets in the city, and were cleaning up the cemeteries, and it was wonderful. So thank you. There were thousands of Liberty students helping us out, so we're grateful for your help. They do that yearly, and that's wonderful, out of their Office of Spiritual Development. So thank you, LU and students. And then lastly, the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Lynchburg is going to be launching a reading academy in conjunction with helping out with the literacy movement here in the city to help our kiddos be better readers. So if you are a former reading specialist or current reading specialist and are looking for some extra work on the side, please contact the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Lynchburg at 846-1111 and see how you can help our kiddos read better. Thank you.
Dr. Wilder?
Just want to commend the city for the opening of the amphitheater. It was amazing, especially the gospel choir at the beginning. They did a fantastic job. It just looks beautiful, the attraction. Also on Facebook, I've seen the thing about of all the events that happen in our city for the month of March. So we have some great entertainment coming outside, all in our communities outside and indoors as well. So I want to commend whoever the person is. I think the Visitor Center, I believe, did that. So I want to commend them for doing that project. Only question I've gotten a few questions about the chair policy at the amphitheater. Just give me some information so I can kind of help better explain that. I think I've seen something on Facebook about the hazards and uniformity or whatever. I need something better. I think it was like $10 rental fee or whatever. People said it's a little high. So I just need some little more information so I can get back to people that keep asking me that same question from several different people. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Ms. Timmer?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had mentioned a couple of these before, and I'm sorry if I missed staff responses. The Lakeside Drive stretch, and I know it includes Bedford County, but if there's opportunity to look at speed reduction and talk to Bedford County, really about that stretch where especially when you're coming back into town from the Windhurst area and you're coming back into central Lynchburg through Bedford, that stretch where you're passing the Starbucks and coming down past the Ace Hardware, there's that blind rise. And even this morning, there was a large accident there. I hear about accidents there all the time. So that stretch, if we can talk to Bedford County, if we can reduce that to 35 or something in that area where those blind spots, and there's a lot of in and outs with businesses, I'd like to explore what we can do in that stretch. This is actually a request from a CVCC student to understand better the timing of the implementation of the new streetlights, because in some of the intersections you have the new light masts going in, but they're covered, and you have the old lights still functioning, and there's just been some confusion around where to look, what's happening, those signaling components. So if there can just be some kind of if there's opportunity for a brief response in PDC or something where the student can come and participate, because that was their request, that would be awesome if there's that opportunity. I had mentioned this in a general meeting, and Alicia, I'll bring this to you as far as getting it on the official scheduling with the whole agenda process. But a task force or something else to look at the off-ramp that we all kind of discussed, generally agreeing with the need for an off-ramp when it comes to the curfew, the youth curfew, and whether that's the need for discussions between the police chief and a designee and the school administration or a designee. However, we need to facilitate those conversations so that things are not so siloed. and look at what an off-ramp might look like for our city, how we can address some of these things differently, or more comprehensively where it pairs together. I would like to, I'll talk to you about getting that on the agenda, but that's forthcoming. Piggybacking Mr. Feraldi's comments on the zoning question and unrelateds living in a house, if that exploration could also look at the distinction between long-term and rental, because I believe when it's like a short-term rental situation, like an Airbnb, it allows for 4, but the long-term residence, it's only 3, so maybe we just bump it up to where it mirrors that. I don't know, but that may be a caveat of exploration, as well as, I'm sorry, I know this is a long list, but we haven't had roll call, and is the recovery home versus group home conversation that's been ongoing, and where there's opportunity to accurately reflect the DOJ and Equal Protection Housing Act with our city code in a way that mirrors into the state distinctions between group home and recovery home, so that we have regulation authority that is compliant with that federal understanding. That's a conversation that I'm getting a lot of questions about, and I really believe we need to tackle as council. 2 more. I mentioned this to all of council, the Blue Ridge Regional Jail. With the Blue Ridge Regional Jail, they have altered the way in which they allow outside groups to come in and provide wraparound services and trainings to inmates, and it has diminished the accessibility to the inmates to provide that education and those services. If there's opportunity, whether it's through Chief Edwards or oh my gosh, my brain. But if there's opportunity to essentially approach that in a way that we can look at more access and that being more comprehensive to inmates, I'd really appreciate that. And then the last being that I'm going to follow up with you on vape shops and vape shop zoning compliance when it comes to signage, especially lights at night. Thank you. I know that was backlogged, and we've been having some of these conversations already, but thank you, Kent.
Mr. Missions.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First thing I want to point out is I want to thank Tim Mitchell for the work they did in reopening the Blackwater Creek reconnection. That was fantastic. I appreciate the work Tim did with that. Also, Tim's the guy right now. I want to thank Tim for working hard to get money back to one of our citizens who had an issue with being overcharged for water and some services that the city required them to do when it was on the city's end with the leaking meter, and you know, it's always fantastic to get money back to our citizens, and I appreciate the work the water department did for that as well. But I've got, Mr. Mayor, a serious question for the city manager. The city manager and our CFO, Donna Witt, traveled to New York to meet with S&P, Moody's, and Fitch, and in light of the written admission this afternoon that a 30,000 by 2031 Liberty University on-campus enrollment projection was provided to those rating agencies during the credit presentation, a projection that's now been told to us was heard somewhere that the city got ahead of itself on. There's no source for that information, admits it may or may not be accurate. We're talking about a projection that was provided to the credit rating agencies of nearly a 20% increase in our population by 2031. That was published in an S&P report, that was published in the News in Advance, that people looking to invest in our city may see that as a signal to, hey, we need to invest within the next 5 years by 2031 for this projected population growth. What specific legal, financial, and reputational risks does this create for the city of Lynchburg? Specifically, is there any potential for SEC enforcement exposure, for misleading disclosures in connection with our Series 2026 general obligation bonds? Is there any risk of rating agency action or market reaction now that this unverified information was cited in S&P's public report as a key positive factor supporting our AA+ credit rating? And is there exposure to bondholder claims or increased future borrowing costs? These are questions I think that council deserves to have a written response to pretty quickly, and I think we need to figure out how to correct this information that was put out there, because for for that to be out there that there's gonna be a 20% population increase in our city in 5 years, and it's unsupported. We need to know how that happened, and we need to get that corrected. Thank you.
Mr. Deemer?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've got 3 quick items, and one of them is kind of a repeat from what Councilman just said. First, on the streetlight report from Appalachian Power, we're now past the expected timeline. That report matters. Streetlights are a basic public safety issue, not a cosmetic one, and I'd like to firmly deliver a firm delivery date on that report, an explanation for the delay, and a report that gives us actionable timelines for fixing outages and tracking them going forward. Second, I've been getting media inquiries regarding claims of explosive growth tied to Liberty University that were reportedly shared with the bond agencies, council, investors, and the public. I've asked for clarification and supporting data. If anything was overstated or not fully accurate, it needs to be corrected with every group that relied on that information, including our citizens. This is about credibility and making sure the record is accurate. And finally, something positive, Thomas Road Baptist Church is offering full scholarships through their Camp Hideaway and Thomas Road Outpost programs, so local kids can attend summer camp at no cost with transportation included. That's a real opportunity for families here in Lynchburg, and I'd encourage us to help get the word out through our schools and our community partners so it reaches the kids who actually need it the most. It's approximately a $400 week-long camp that the kids can get for free, especially the underprivileged kids. So this is all they need. I've got a stack of them. I'm hoping the mayor and I can figure out some way to get these out to the kids who need them. But if you're watching this on TV or internet, just feel free to contact us because we can help your kids go to camp all the way from kindergarten to 12th grade. So hope you all will take advantage of that.
You're gonna get a lot of
It's fine. That's what I want.
Item number 9, closed session.
Consideration of a closed meeting pursuant to 2.2-3711A7 of the Code of Virginia 1950 as amended to consult with the city attorney regarding specific legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice, the subject of the closed meeting being specific to a personnel matter involving a city employee.
Thank you. May I have a motion, please? You second? I'll second. Okay.
All right, Councilmember Feraldi?
Yes.
Councilmember Mischins?
Yes.
Councilmember Reed?
Yes.
Councilmember Timmer?
Yes.
Councilmember Wilder?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Deemer?
Yes.
Mayor Taylor?
Yes.
The motion passes. We are now in closed session.